Welcome back to Chat Like a Native. This is where we get into the real nuts and bolts of sounding natural in English.
Exactly.
And today, this deep dive is definitely for you if you're learning English, and sometimes, well, you get tripped up by grammar rules.
Yeah, the ones that native speakers seem to just ignore.
Right, the ones they bend or break all the time. So we're looking at those common grammar myths today.
The ones that cause maybe a little bit of stress.
A lot of stress sometimes. Our goal here is really to show you why it's okay, actually, often better, to loosen up on some of these old rules.
So you can communicate more clearly and, actually start to chat like a native.
We'll even get into where these rules came from, some surprising history there.
Definitely. And we'll give you lots of examples of how English sounds, in everyday use. It's not about being sloppy. It's about confidence and naturalness.
Okay, let's dive in. A lot of these sort of traditional rules you might have learned feel stiff.
They do.
Because they actually came from an attempt way back
Yeah.
to make English grammar line up with
Latin. Can you believe it?
Latin.
Yeah, back in the 17th, 18th centuries, some influential grammarians thought Latin was the ideal, and English should, conform.
Which is kind of wild because Latin and English are structurally so different.
Totally different. English grammar developed organically, forcing it into a Latin box it didn't really work smoothly. It creates awkwardness.
Yeah.
And modern English, the style guides we use today, they're much more flexible. They reflect how the language is actually used.
That context is really helpful. Okay, so let's tackle myth number one. This is a big one. You can't start a sentence with a conjunction.
Oh, yeah. Never start with and, but so. You hear that all the time.
Every time.
And the reason, it's exactly what we just talked about, this grammarians looking at Latin.
Uh-huh.
In Latin, you wouldn't typically end one clause with the conjunction that links to a whole new sentence. Somehow that got twisted into this idea that you can't start an English sentence with one.
Even though people had been doing it naturally in English for ages.
For centuries. Yeah, it's like a historical artifact that just stuck around.
Okay, so history aside, why is it actually fine, even good, to start sentences with conjunctions now?
Well, language changes, friends.
Yeah.
And clear communication tends to win out.
Makes sense.
And even the big style guides, like the Chicago Manual of Style, they say, yeah, it's standard practice now. Good writers do it.
So what does it do when you start with and or but?
It can add real emphasis, like starting with but creates this immediate contrast, or and can add information with a bit more punch.
Yeah, it feels maybe a bit less formal than starting with however or moreover.
It often does, yeah. It can also make transitions smoother, especially between shorter sentences. It connects ideas in a way that feels more like talking.
Okay, let's use that example. The report was overdue, but the team finally submitted it yesterday.
See, that but right at the start, it really flags the contrast. It pulls you in.
Okay, I hear that. And the other one, more conversational. I wanted to go to the concert, and I was thrilled when they invited me backstage.
Yeah, using and there feels like storytelling. Like you're just adding the next piece of the story very naturally.
It's like talking to a friend.
Exactly. Adds that informal, easy feel.
So the idea isn't like start every sentence this way.
No, definitely not.
But use it when you want that impact or that conversational tone, like emails, maybe blogs.
Precisely. Use it strategically and just, follow normal punctuation rules otherwise. Like you'd still put a comma after, however, if you use that at the start.
Got it. It's another tool in the box.
Exactly. For clear, effective writing.
Okay, myth number 2. This one's always fun. You must never split an infinitive.
Ah, the classic, to boldly go.
Right, where you put a word, usually an adverb, between to and the verb.
And guess where this rule comes from?
Let me guess.
Latin.
Bingo. Those 18th century grammarians again? See, Latin infinitives are single words. Amare, lero. You physically cannot split them.
But English infinitives are 2 words. To plus the verb. To go, to read. Exactly. They're different beasts entirely. So insisting you can't put anything between the 2 parts of an English infinitive, just because you can't stick something inside a single Latin word. It doesn't really follow logic for English, does it?
No, it sounds completely arbitrary when you put it like that.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
And often splitting the infinitive in English actually makes things clearer, or adds emphasis, or just sounds better rhythmically.
Like to boldly go. Putting boldly right there emphasizes how they're going.
Right. The alternatives sound, a bit clunky. Boldly to go boldly. The split version often feels the most natural and direct.
Okay, what about the example? She decided to quickly finish her homework before dinner.
Putting quickly right there makes it crystal clear it modifies finish. It's about the speed of finishing.
Right. If you said, she decided quickly to finish, that sounds like the decision was quick.
Exactly. Or, she decided to finish her homework quickly. Is fine, but maybe less immediate than the split version.
Okay. And the other one, they want to really understand the rules before the test.
To really understand? Sounds completely normal, right?
Yeah, totally natural.
Trying to avoid the split there might lead to something awkward like they want really to understand, which just sounds wrong. Or they want to understand the rules really, which is okay, but maybe less emphatic.
So the guideline here is clarity comes first.
Absolutely. If splitting makes your meaning clearer or just sounds more natural, go for it.
But don't force it if it sounds clumsy. Like, to always be very completely prepared is probably too much.
Yeah, it gets awkward. And most modern style guides, they're fine with split infinitives when they work well.
So prioritize clear, natural expression over some old imported rule.
That's the key.
All right, myth number 3. Another one that causes a lot of worry. You must never end a sentence with a preposition.
This one. This rule has led to some truly contorted sentences over the years.
And the origin story? Same deal.
Same deal. Latin again. In Latin grammar, prepositions generally have to come before the noun or pronoun they govern.
So the thinking was English must do the same thing.
Pretty much. Even though English speakers have been happily ending sentences with prepositions, linguists call it preposition stranding sense, like Anglo-Saxon times, it's baked into the language structure.
Wow. So trying not to do it is actually fighting against the natural flow of English.
In many cases, yes. It often forces you into phrasing that sounds super formal, really stiff and just, not how people actually talk.
Okay, let's show this. Compare. This is something about which I was curious.
Sounds very formal, maybe a bit academic, but compare it to.
This is something I was curious about.
Completely natural. That's what you'd say, what you'd write in most situations.
Okay, or the grammar textbook classic. With whom are you going?
Sounds like you're maybe writing a formal invitation from the 19th century.
Versus the everyday.
Who are you going with? Effortless? Standard.
Right. And one more. About what is she talking?
Again, kind of awkward. Compared to the totally normal.
I don't know what she's talking about.
Yeah. Trying to rearrange that second one to avoid the preposition at the end just breaks the sentence in English.
So it seems like for everyday conversation, informal writing, ending with a preposition is not just allowed, it's often the preferred, most natural way.
Absolutely. It's the default.
In really formal situations, like maybe legal documents or super academic papers, you might choose the preposition first structure, but you don't have to tie yourself in knots to avoid it otherwise.
Don't sacrifice clarity and naturalness just to obey an old borrowed rule. Effective communication is the goal.
Okay, so we've looked at these 3 big myths, starting with conjunctions, splitting infinitives, ending with prepositions. And the big picture seems to be these rigid rules often came from trying to make English act like Latin.
Which it isn't.
Right. And modern English usage, the way people actually communicate effectively, embraces flexibility.
Yeah, realizing these are often artificial limits, not core English rules, is really liberating, I think, especially for learners.
So bending or breaking these specific rules when it helps you be clearer or add emphasis or just sound more natural, that's actually a good thing.
It's a step toward really sounding fluent and feeling confident.
And we can even see how using these flexibilities together works. Like in this example, I wanted to work on my project last night, but I needed to quickly review my notes, so I stayed up late. And I finally felt ready.
Yeah, that flows really nicely, doesn't it? You got conjunctions starting sentences, but so and linking the ideas conversationally. And to quickly review, that split infinitive sounds perfectly fine, emphasizes the speed. It just reads like someone naturally recounting their evening.
Or how about mixing formal and natural? In this report, I will explain the method, but I will keep it simple. I plan to briefly discuss each step and then explain why it matters. I hope this clarifies things for everyone, even if you were wondering how I came up with these figures.
Okay, so starting with but there feels like a smooth connector, not jarringly informal. To briefly discuss, another natural-sounding split infinitive, and ending with how I came up with these figures feels fine, even though it implies ending with a prepositional idea with these figures. It doesn't sound awkward at all. It's professional, but still readable and not overly stiff.
So the real danger maybe is overcorrection. Like, don't force these things if they don't actually sound good or clear in context.
Exactly. Don't split an infinitive just because you can if it makes the sentence clunky. Don't start every sentence with and.
Use them as tools.
Use them when they help, when they make your communication clearer, more natural, more effective. Clarity and flow are still the main goals.
Think of it as adding nuance, not just breaking rules randomly.
Well put. It's about making your English sound more authentic.
Okay, so to wrap up this deep dive then, letting go of that rigid grip on these 3 specific rules, starting sentences with conjunctions, splitting infinitives, ending with prepositions, it's not going to hurt your English.
Nope. It's quite the opposite, often.
It can actually make it sound clearer, more natural, more like the way native speakers talk and write every single day, probably without even thinking about these rules.
And remember, modern usage, style guides, they support this flexibility. So you should feel confident using it when it helps you get your message across well.
Definitely feel empowered. Okay, here's a final thought to leave you with. The next time you're reading something in English, a novel, an online article, or listening to native speakers, maybe on TV or in a movie, try to consciously notice these things. How often do they start sentences with and or but? Do you spot split infinitives? Do sentences end with prepositions?
Yeah, pay attention.
Yeah.
What does observing that tell you about how English actually works in the real world, compared to maybe some of the strict rules you were taught?
Something to think about.